A Lyft driver in Philadelphia not only shot the guy who took his car, but shot his accomplice as well. In this video, we're going to break down a story about a Lyft driver and a passenger carjacked at gunpoint and how they survived. But before we get into that, we have a gun giveaway going on right now. You can enter for free, but it ends really soon. So just click the link in the description down below and reveal which brand new gun you could win. All right, Tom, we are here together again, and we're going to roll through about 2 minutes of video from a rather long story in Philadelphia, and we'll set a little bit of backstory about this. A Lyft driver driving along, and the bad guys bump him from behind and finally get him to stop and find out what's going on. And the guy jumps out with a rifle, takes the car. The Lyft driver says, "No, wait, I got a passenger. Let me get her out." Gets the passenger out, and then shoots the guy who had gotten in his car, and then shoots the getaway driver who was in the other car. And let's see what the police have to say about this here in Philadelphia.
This 38-year-old Lyft driver, after being rear-ended and carjacked, he pulled his weapon and fired shots at both vehicles. The vehicle that was stolen from him fired shots at the Honda. The driver, who had the getaway car, struck both of these individuals, and now they're both at the hospital as prisoners. Very dangerous situation. Fortunately, our Lyft driver, our victim, wasn't shot because he had a rifle put to him, and our Lyft driver had a weapon that he used, and he shot both of the perpetrators.
So this case again illustrates why so many delivery drivers, food delivery drivers, pizza drivers, Uber and Lyft drivers are all running the gun stores and getting legal guns because this is what's happening on a daily basis all around the country and a lot of times here in Philadelphia. Bill, the other thing that you may want to get into is the armored car and tank business, because I'm sure a lot of delivery drivers and Uber drivers would like to be in a tank with a gun turret to keep themselves safe. And here's the other thing. What are you going to do now? You're driving around and you get rear-ended. Are you supposed to leave the scene of an accident and worry about getting a ticket, or have your car damaged by somebody who was maybe on their phone and rear-ended you? Because now the first thought, if you hear stories like this repeatedly, is that, oh my God, I'm getting carjacked. I don't want to stop here even though I've been rammed from behind. So that's the other quandary right now. Everybody watching is thinking, like, what do I do if I'm rear-ended? Because this is happening right in the middle of the afternoon, like yesterday, right on Parkside. Police had so many witnesses at all the events at all three locations because this is right in the daytime, and people thinking, I got an accident victim here, or I have two shooting victims, let me help. Little do they know, it's two armed carjackers. They found that rifle that the guy had.
You can see there's a lot to unpack with this, and our reporter there from Philadelphia, you know, making the reference to wanting to drive around in a tank or armored car. What I really like to see is liberal East Coast city, the police talking about legal weapons, defending yourself, and the way they were talking about this is as if perhaps the Lyft driver not going to face any charges, possibly. We don't know for sure, but the police were talking about him as a victim. He got out of his vehicle, helped his passenger, and then shot the guy who was in his vehicle and shot the guy who was in the getaway vehicle, the vehicle that rammed him from behind. So where do we even begin on this, Tom?
Well, number one, check your local listings. We don't know, or at least offhand, I don't know all the nuances of Pennsylvania self-defense law. So I'm going to assume that it's like most states, reasonably down the middle, and that means that you have to be in reasonable fear of imminent death or great bodily harm. Now, there's a lot of facts that we don't have. So as an example, when the Good Samaritan, when the shooter, when the victim, I like that one the best.
Yeah.
When the victim shot the guy who was in his car, was that guy making a death threat? Was he pointing a gun at him? These would be extraordinarily relevant facts to know. Ditto, and exactly on the second car, the getaway car, the initial car they were in when he shot that driver. So otherwise, without those facts there, we all know what the possible issue here is, which is how is he going to be able to explain that at the moment he pulled the trigger, and as well the moment when he pulled the trigger the last time, he was in a reasonable fear of imminent death or great bodily harm, that he or someone else was facing a deadly threat. Now, based on what I know of what's going on in Philly, this seems like well, it's a pandemic of
Yeah.
car thefts, of strong arm robberies, all this other kind of stuff. And of course, if this was in Manhattan, the good news is, hey, these would just be misdemeanors we're talking about. Who
Yeah.
cares about a misdemeanor,
Yeah,
right?
they didn't really intend to shoot
didn't-
you with that rifle.
You're right. It just went off.
Yeah.
It just went off, right? So my concern is that he might be getting charged, and obviously the police, at least as of this moment, and they presumably know far more than what you and I do right now, but they seem deeply sympathetic to his situation as driven by probably, number one, the context of what they see day in, day out, and then number two, God willing, some better supporting evidence about what the situation was like at the precise moment he pulled the trigger.
Yeah, and we only saw a small portion of this. This was like an 8-minute video segment on local TV in Philadelphia. The crime scene, convoluted as it was, stretched out over 6 blocks. The initial carjacker got shot at the site of the carjacking, drove 3 blocks one direction, and the getaway driver, and from what I understand, the getaway driver had the rifle with him. He got shot at that scene as well, drove 3 blocks in the other direction, where both of them stopped, and I don't know if they died, but one fell out of his car. And the reporter pointed out that there were so many witnesses, that it happened during the day at 2 in the afternoon. There were so many witnesses that as police got there and started sorting through, they got 2 shooting victims who turned out to be criminals. And everyone else was running around. Yep, I saw the whole thing. Those guys tried to carjack him, and he fought back. This is getting to be a convoluted mess of self-defense, especially if we're talking about, does the Pennsylvania Castle Doctrine law extend to your vehicle? So then the engagement with the guy who is stealing your vehicle may be covered by that. The other guy had a rifle and pointed it. So now we're looking at imminent threat that way. This is just a mess that I don't think anybody would ever want to be in.
No, and from the prosecution side, it's, well, the first guy was in your car at that point, and you weren't in it. So this is now defense's stuff, and you should let him get away. And perhaps, I'm sure the second guy, if he's still alive, will say, "Oh, I didn't point any gun at him, right? I didn't say anything like that." So the prosecution case more or less makes itself, and candidly, so does the defense case. I think one of the big things that people need to remember is what's the context, because those jurors, they know the context. They understand what's been going on in their city for a long time. But something that I'm sure struck you, and it certainly strikes me, is the fact this is happening at 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah.
Now, when you have these kind of offenses where guys pulling out an AK-47, and that's not an anti-AK-47 remark, like, let me be clear, all right? But when he's pulling out an AK-47 in what, I mean, I don't know Philly very well, it looks kind of downtownish to me, right? In broad daylight at 2 o'clock, again, that's not something that, like, it's not we're living in a utopia and someone does that, right? That might be a 10 o'clock at night or a darkness sort of thing. 2 o'clock in the afternoon, these criminals are getting pretty brazen. They must feel like they own the streets and can get away with it.
Yeah, and the follow-up question that the reporter brought, which I think is very good and something that we need to talk about, the tactics of what we're dealing with here, is somebody bumps you from behind and you get out of your vehicle while you're already at a tactical disadvantage. But by the same token, you just don't want to assume that every minor fender bender or car accident is the launching pad for a carjacking. But maybe you have to in certain situations and locations and stuff like that. I mean, in most cases, these guys who are doing the bump and carjack are not hitting your car hard enough to do real damage.
Right.
So if somebody just bumps you a little bit, it's like, oh, okay, I can keep driving. Maybe roll down your window and wave and say, follow me to the police station and drive that direction. But this becomes a very serious situation about what to do in an event like this so that you don't end up in a gunfight.
Right. And to the reporter's point, and again, I don't know exactly what the laws are in Pennsylvania, but if you've been involved in an accident and if you leave the scene of the accident, depending upon your local state laws, whether or not anyone is hurt, whether or not it was just you versus property or you versus another vehicle with someone in it, these could be tickets, these could be crimes. So, My thought, which I'm using thought because it certainly isn't legal advice. Check your local listings, all right? This is not legal advice. But my thought on it is I bet a lot of local attorneys would be telling people, look, subject to our state's laws, if you feel like you're about to be a victim of carjacking, call 911, keep driving, and be the best witness you can possibly be.
Yeah.
And, you know, if you recall, maybe it was 10 or so years ago where there was this rash of people putting like $100 bills or $20 bills underneath windshield wipers.
Yeah.
Right. And, you know, in like a parking lot, you know, they'd target a car, then they wait for the person to, you know, they'd follow them, wait for them to stop, get out, and then that's when they struck. Right.
Yeah.
So, and that just goes back to a lot of the tactics and a lot of the legal exposure, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because tactical exposure is legal exposure, because legal exposure deals with, for us, the good guys, when we have to make a deadly force decision response, that's going to be the problem for us. That's when we're at maximum legal exposure. Getting in and out of cars, as you know, that is prime problem.
And to your point on what to do if somebody bumps you from behind in your vehicle, you're saying call 911, get on the phone immediately and let them know your location. You know, they give them all the relevant information about where you are, what kind of car you're driving, and something like that. I'm going to say if you have a legally owned handgun at that point, it might be time to at least get it ready for action. At least, you know, I don't want to use the old Rooster Cogburn line, fill your hand, but it might be, you know, you're looking in the rearview mirror. Who is this person who bumped into me? Was it, you know, somebody holding a latte in one hand, a cell phone in the other hand, and they bumped you at the stoplight? Or is it a group of young men? Okay, that's typically how this is going to start. You might need to get yourself ready for something like that.
Right, absolutely.
Well, thank you very much for being here again, Tom. Your insights are always great and helpful. Folks, thank you for watching all the way to the end of the video. And a quick reminder, we have that gun giveaway going on, and it ends really soon. So all you have to do is click the link below and reveal which brand new gun you could win. I'm Kevin Michalowski, Director of Content for the U.S. Concealed Carry Association. If you like videos like this, please subscribe to this channel. Share this video everywhere. Click that notification bell. We'll notify you every time something new comes out. Stay safe, and we'll see you in the next video.